Welcome to Inside the Channel, brought to you by Sophos, a podcast where we discuss trends in the channel today. I'm your host, Kenna Johnson. Joining me are Scott Barlow and Chris Wanamaker from Sophos. We'll explore how MSPs can transition to a security-first practice with the help of Sophos products and services, and gain insight from Chris's firsthand experience as an MSP. Glad to have you both here with me. Let's start with segment 1, transitioning to a security-first MSP. Chris, can you share a little bit about your background and how you became a security-first MSP?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been in the MSP space since 2007 is when I started the first one. And I had a series of mergers and bought and sold. And my last MSP started in 2018 and sold it about 2 years later in 2020, 2021. You know, our focus at that point was really on the security because like most MSPs starting out, we did help desk, we did projects, we did all that sort of stuff. But seeing where things were going in the world, we realized that security needed to be at the forefront of our conversations with our clients. So we, in early 2020, wound up switching our focus to become a security-first MSP.
What were some of the biggest challenges you faced?
Some of the biggest challenges we faced were around changing the conversation from a price-based discussion to a value and a solution-based discussion. As a lot of MSPs can attest to, having those conversations with your clients, the clients are always focused on that bottom line number. But when you're selling a security-first organization, it really has to be focused on the value that you provide as an MSP to your clients, as well as the solutions that you can provide them to help protect their organization and their employees.
How did partnering with Sophos benefit your business?
It benefited my business in a lot of ways. Most importantly was the partner program. I will tell you that the amount of support that we received from Sophos was tremendous. And I think one of the most underutilized areas of Sophos in terms of the partner program are the marketing materials. They have a fantastic team that puts together a lot of information and really helps educate the clients on a subject that can be quite expansive and at times a bit confusing. And Sophos really works to simplify that and help get the message across. For us, what the partner program represented was an alignment of goals. And Sophos was there to help us build out our MSP by aligning their goals with the goals that we had as the MSP.
And for anybody that's actually interested in existing partners, it's partnerportal.sophos.com. And up there, you'll find a host of, website in a box. You can find syndication of the threat intelligence feed, a lot of stuff to actually deepen and enrichen your website as an MSP, but also to leverage some of these marketing materials to help actually grow your business and upsell and cross-sell to your existing customers.
Chris, what made you go all in with their solutions?
That list is quite long. I will be very candid with you. There are a lot of things that Sophos provides MSPs that, that I could go on and on about. But I think the biggest thing was the synchronized security, or SyncSec for short. And that is something that no other vendor in this space is doing. And as somebody who is focused on the security for our clients, protecting them, protecting our reputation as an MSP, the synchronized security really allowed us to tie a multitude of different products and services together and really have a good holistic view of our clients' networks. Not have to go between program 1 and program 2 and make sure everything was lined up. Out of the box, all of the Sophos products talk to each other. The MDR team has the ability to now pull all of the telemetry data from all of that and really go in and see what's going on, make sure that the client is protected. And again, this was something that Sophos has been doing for a while, and no other vendor is. And to me, that is the most important part with why we as the MSP chose to go with Sophos, because it really reduced the amount of work that our team had to do. It made sure that we didn't have blind spots and everything just worked together very seamlessly.
Speaking of MDR, what impact did implementing Sophos MDR services have on your business?
This was a big one for us. When we became a security first MSP back in 2020, we focused everything around MDR. I mean, we made Sophos the core of our MSP security offering, but MDR was at the core of that because they could go in and access telemetry from the firewall and the endpoints and things like that. But as an MSP, what we used to tell our clients was, you need to focus on your core business activities. Let us, as the MSP, handle your technology, because as a business, you can't afford to have a server guy and a network guy and a project guy and all of these different people. And so we say outsource to us as the MSP because we can handle all of this for you. And essentially, that's what Sophos allowed me to do with their MDR offering. I wasn't able to build out my entire SOC. And if I were to do that, I'd be looking at 3 to 5 individuals to have proper 24 hours a day, 365 days a year coverage. And that's just extremely expensive. So it allowed me to outsource my security team to Sophos. So I knew I was covered. I had a team that was there 24/7. And it allowed me to focus on running the MSP, which is what I knew how to do best. And Sophos knows security best, and they ran that part of my business. And so it took that pressure off of me, knowing that I had all of that covered and I could move forward and continue building my MSP, which I did very successfully in that 2-year span.
Chris, one of my favorite quotes, I think from a while back when you were an MSP, is you're like, MDR helps me sleep at night. And then all of a sudden I heard it from MSP after MSP. And I think when you look at the MDR solution, there's really 3 ways that you can operate. One, we can notify the MSP that there's a problem and they can go fix it. That's not really the best solution. A lot of MSPs will start with collaborate, where they'll work with the Sophos MDR team to go and do the neutralization or the threat hunt together. And then the third, once they're comfortable with the collaboration, they can authorize us. And the authorization is really the most important thing, because time is of the essence when there's a threat. And so when MSPs feel comfortable, we work on their behalf to go and do the neutralization of a threat, but also work with them or work independently to do the remediation as well.
Scott, that's something that is very, very true. And you're right. It did help me sleep better at night because, when we went all in on Sophos security first, we turned on MDR complete for every single one of our clients right out of the box. We said, we want you, Sophos, to be able to help us as the MSP put out the fires. And it really did. It allowed me to know that I could go to sleep at night and that there were a team of experts watching our clients' networks. And I mean, there was even a situation right in the very beginning, when we made this shift. We were like most MSPs out there. We had our list of products and services, and we took that to our client. And we said, what do you want? And they said, well, I want this. I don't want this. And, but they hired us to be the expert. They hired us as the professional. And by allowing them to cross things off, it left security holes and, things that could potentially go wrong. So when we made the switch, we turned everything on, and we actually had a client who, through a Chrome browser extension that was compromised at the developer level, had an incident within their network. And I woke up that morning about 8:30, and I had an email from the MDR team that said, hey, this is what happened with this client. This is what we found. This is what we went in and did. We took care of all of it. And they gave me a report. And I looked at it and I said, wow, this is fantastic. I had, just turned it on. I'm glad I did for the client. And I provided that to the client. And the client went crazy. He's like, we had an incident. What's going on? What do I need to do? I said, nothing. I said, we have you protected. And, about a week or so later, we had a conversation where I was talking to him about the price increase and things that were going on with our switch to security first. And the first words out of his mouth when I got on the phone with him is, he goes, I know that this conversation is going to cost me more money. He goes, but I don't care how much, as long as my company is protected. And so to me, that was that kind of that aha moment where it's like, this is what every client of ours needs. And so when we put the program together and we centered around MDR, we said, this is our standard and we are not backing off of it. And I'm so glad that we did, because throughout the rest of the time that I was there at the MSP, it really, really helped. The MDR team would come through often and say, hey, we saw this going on. Hey, we saw some weird activity. You might want to check this out. So it was always that extra set of eyes looking at a lot of telemetry data to be able to report things to us and let us know, hey, we've got it handled, or, hey, this is something we noticed. Is it legit? Is it not? And it gives you this great peace of mind.
Chris, you mentioned some challenges with marketing. How did your approach to marketing and sales change when you pivoted to security?
This was interesting. So as I was saying earlier, we were like most MSPs. We let our clients choose. And so when we made the decision to go and be security first, we put together a letter. And I outlined in this letter what we, as the MSP, were going to do for our clients. I set the standard. I said, here's how we're going to protect you on all of these different fronts. These are all the things that we're going to do. And so we communicated all of this to our clients. And we met with them, and we didn't just send the letter and raise the rates. I mean, we met with them and we explained to them what we were doing, why we were doing it. And some clients absolutely understood it. Right away, they said, makes sense. This is important. We need to do it. We had other clients who, needed a little bit more information and education. 95% of our clients, when we sent out this letter, got a price increase. Now, this is at the beginning of COVID, when businesses were furloughing people, laying people off, trying to reduce expenses. They were going through difficult times, and we're going to 95% of them and going, we're going to raise your rates. The average was 38%. The highest was 68%. And we didn't lose a single client. We had one that gave us some pushback and said they were going to go look someplace else. And they wound up coming back about 26 days later. We gave them a 30-day window, and 26 days later, they came back and they said, no one is doing what you're doing out there, and I feel far safer because you've set that standard. We stopped essentially doing, allowing our clients to go through our invoices and our agreements and just mark off what they didn't want. We said, this is what it is. Here's our security offering. Yes, we'll still do the tickets. Yes, we'll still do the projects. Yes, we'll still do procurement. But this is our security standard. And it doesn't matter if you're on our low program, our middle program, or our high program. The security standard is exactly the same between all of them. And so, yeah, that letter, I would say, was the most pivotal change for how we shifted from being what I call a traditional MSP to a security first MSP.
And I'll just add to this. I mean, there's a concept out there in the community and in the world called the go-giver. And so Chris, when he actually created this, what we now call the MDR opt-out campaign, he shared it with us. And I asked Chris, can we actually take this and, modify it slightly and, create a template that all MSPs can use? And he obliged, more than happy to have us share it with other MSPs. And the feedback has been exactly what Chris says, right? I mean, I have stories where 99% of my customers decided to upgrade. And the way that it's positioned and the way that it's crafted, talking about the industry and the threat landscape changing and becoming so much more sophisticated, MSPs are actually using this template, sending the email out to their customers. And what they're actually doing is creating a link to their PSA system, say, yes, I agree, have the PSA system open up a ticket, a technician goes into Sophos Central and literally clicks a button. All of the endpoints are upgraded to MDR complete, and they're off to the races, and it just gets picked up in the next billing cycle. So it has been phenomenal. And Chris, thank you again for sharing that with us as Sophos, but also with the MSP community.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my personal philosophies is, and I love that you mentioned that book. I actually have it behind me. It's in this stack right here, The Go-Giver. And, for me, it was, I felt like the MSP community really needed to raise the standards. There are MSPs out there that let the client dictate to them what they do and don't do within the network. And I think us as MSPs need to say, listen, if we're responsible for your network, if we're responsible for the safety and security of your clients, your employees, your data, your systems, this is the standard we need to go by. And so the reason I shared that with Sophos was for that reason. I wanted others to take that and go have that same conversation with their clients and raise that up. So all of us as MSPs at the time could have a far better experience and a far better standard set for our clients in the industry overall.
Chris, how did your pricing strategy contribute to your competitive edge?
It wasn't the pricing. I'll be very candid. We were on the high side. If you were to compare us with a lot of the other MSPs in the area, we were higher priced. We weren't the highest, but we were way up there. And our conversation didn't revolve around price. The conversations that I had with clients and even prospects alike was focused on the value, was focused on the standards, was focused on the solutions that we would provide them. Price became secondary or even lower on that at that point, and we had a lot of prospects come to us and go, we've heard about you. And, we're currently with XYZ, or, we have an IT guy, whatever their situation was. And we'd sit down and we'd talk to them and we'd evaluate their network and we'd talk to them about risk. That's what the conversation that we had was about, the risk, where they're at, where they're trying to go, what does their risk profile look like, and how we as a security first organization can protect them and provide the solutions that they need. And so in their head, they're like, oh, this is going to be crazy expensive, $1,000 a user, set up and everything. When we come in at $300 or $400 a user, they go, oh, that's not that bad, and then they sign right up at that point. So it wasn't, we didn't compete on price. We didn't want to compete on price. We had plenty of prospects come in and go, well, I want to know how much you charge. And I would just go, we're very expensive and, but we're here to solve bigger problems. If you just want somebody to just handle tickets, there are plenty of companies out there that will do that. But for us, we're focused on your security. We're focused on protecting you and your data and everything else. And so the conversation was very different and price became a non-factor at that point.
Let's move to segment 2, choosing the right MDR. Scott, how does Sophos MDR help MSPs easily hunt down threats?
Really all starts with Sophos XOps, which actually brings together deep expertise across the attack environment to defend against even the most advanced threats. And Sophos XOps really has about 500 people across different groups within the company. And, so you have Sophos Labs, this really deep malware analysis and response experts. You have the real-time intelligence from the Sophos Managed Threat Response team, the frontline incident response people, the world-leading deep learning capabilities that is really driven by Sophos AI. And then, a lot of the security operation expertise from the teams that are running the Sophos app, the products, the defenses that are out there. So with this deep understanding, we actually can provide better defense and then better outcomes for the customer. And so Sophos XOps provides this unparalleled insight into how the threats are actually built and delivered, I should say, and actually helps us get a fuller picture of what that threat landscape looks like. And so when we leverage the Sophos XOps, MDR team can operate a 24/7 active threat hunting team. And it's not really eyes on glass, it's hands on keyboard. So these, experts are actually monitoring what's going on in an environment. If they get an alert, they can immediately, jump in to triage to see what is going on within the environment. And so a lot of MSPs, like Chris was saying earlier, sleep better at night because they know Sophos XOps is watching 24/7 and we have a global view of what's happening within the threat landscape.
And I think to add to that too, Scott, MSPs deal with a lot of diverse environments. And so, the goal ultimately is to have all of Sophos in there because everything talks natively together. And the Sophos XOps team can get in there, can view the telemetry data, can act on that telemetry data. But because MSPs deal with very diverse environments, sometimes that's not always possible. And so there's also the integrations in there too, which I think is a big piece of it as well, is, the MDR team can pull in telemetry data from other systems that aren't natively Sophos, aren't part of the Sophos environment, can pull that data in so that they also have a view there. Now, I know they can't act on it, but they can at least pull that telemetry data in and provide some insight as to what's going on. And so it expands on, what can be viewed and, the information that comes in and, the overall view of the environment can really be, pushed out. The bounds of that can really be pushed out.
Yeah, we've been talking a lot about the Sophos products and services portfolio, but we haven't actually talked about what's included in there. So let me just briefly explain some of the products and services. It really starts with the endpoint protection. We call that Intercept X Advanced. Then we can layer XDR on top of that. And then MDR can be layered on top of that. So you have that stack of endpoint security. We also have NDR. NDR is really important for Internet of Things, right? So IoT devices that you can't actually put an agent on, you can actually scan the traffic using our NDR solution. But then we get into, ZTNA. We get into, obviously, the Sophos XGS firewall. We have a line of switches, wireless access points. We have email and user security awareness training. And then if you look at the cloud security, that is a up and coming environment that I think a lot of MSPs are going to need to pay attention to, more so now than ever before. And so when we look at cloud native security, the endpoint protection, the firewall in these hyperscalers, right? AWS, Azure, GCP, cloud security posture management is also super important. And so when all of these tools and services are actually built together, we can actually share that telemetry. So if there's something happening in a public cloud environment, either AWS, Azure, Google, whatever, we can adjust that telemetry into our MDR data lake. And then we can, normalize the data and then look for, key trends or indicators of compromise, IOCs, in order to go and help deeper protect the customer and all of their environments, whether it's on-prem, a remote workforce, or in the public cloud.
Chris, from your experience, what makes Sophos MDR stand out from the competition?
First and foremost, it's really, as Scott said, it's the hands-on keyboard versus the eyes on glass. And what I've seen out there, I'm putting my MSP hat back on. When I was in the MSP space, we had Sophos in there, but, we'd have other security vendors come in and go, hey, check out our product, see how cool it is, see all the things that we can do. And every single time, we would say no to their product, and they were priced significantly less than where we were at with Sophos, but it was a very inferior product because their SOC solutions, their MDR solutions would go, hey, there's a fire over there, and it's like, okay, great, you alerted me to a fire. And then they go, okay, we're going to give you some instructions. So go get a bucket, go fill up that bucket, go over to the fire, pour the water on the fire. If the fire's, still there, then, repeat those steps again. What's really different with Sophos is not only do they go, hey, there's a fire over there, they go, I'm going to take the hose and I'm going to go put out the fire. And then I'm going to go check out the other units around and make sure that there's no fire over there. And then we're going to figure out what caused the fire. And we're going to come back and we're going to give you all of this information. So as an MSP, that is a lot of, things that I don't have to do, that my team doesn't have to do. And to me, that was the biggest differentiator between the Sophos MDR product and the others that were out there on the market is I truly had a partner. I had a team that was there to help me as the MSP, to help my clients, and to make sure that everything was protected. I think the other thing too is, and Scott, you can speak to this a little bit more, is the insurance aspect of it. And that came into play a little bit later, as I was exiting the MSP, and we had some experience with it, and it was phenomenal in what we had the experience with. But I know, Scott, you can go into more detail on that.
Yeah, so we actually created a few insurance partnerships, one with Cysurance, another with Measured, and then another with Cowbell. And oftentimes the savings that a customer would receive on their cyber insurance would actually pay for MDR Complete itself. So it's not something that we sell. We actually work with these insurance providers so that the MSP can go to the insurance provider on behalf of their customer, fill out the form, and if they're using MDR Complete and a few other things, right, two-factor authentication and stuff like that, they can get a discount on their insurance. Once they get that discount will actually pay for the MDR solution itself. I'll add a couple of other things. One is Sophos breach warranty protection. So we provide $1,000 per machine up to $1 million if anything ever does happen. And then when MSPs are looking for an MDR solution, they really need to make sure it's compatible with their environment, their needs, their business, etc. So for instance, incident response, right? Do you want to partner with the MDR vendor and then have to have an incident response vendor as well? Or should MDR include incident response? So with MDR Complete, we include incident response. It's not script-based response. It is full hands-on keyboard response for the MSP or with the MSP. We also ingest third-party telemetry. So this is where it's compatible with their environment. You could be using a third-party email service and you want to have that intelligence and the telemetry ingested into the data lake so that you have a more holistic view of what's happening within an environment. There have been numerous scenarios where we have actually captured an open relay on an on-prem exchange server and was able to lock it down before their IP address got blacklisted. So it's super important from that perspective. And then two other. One is the deep integration with RMM and PSA, so helping MSPs improve their operational efficiency. And then lastly, there's a ton of revenue generating opportunities with Sophos, right? You partner on the MDR Complete side, and then as we talked about, you can upsell and cross-sell. Somebody might say, hey, I need to secure my iPads or my tablets or phones, right? So you can implement mobile security or, device encryption, right? Managing BitLocker or File Vault. It can be complicated, right? So we can actually deploy our encryption to manage BitLocker and File Vault. So now MSPs have the opportunity to upsell, cross-sell across different aspects and add to the menu of offerings, as Chris was mentioning, because the second that a customer says, I need this and you don't have it, they're going to go find an MSP that does. And you can rest assured that that MSP is going to try to take the rest of the business as well. So you really want to make sure that you have a more comprehensive, suite of offerings for cybersecurity.
Why is Sophos MDR the ideal solution for MSPs looking to enhance their security offerings?
I'm going to go back to the 24/7 team. That's huge. The bad guys, the threat actors, they don't, go in and compromise a network at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. They wait for the evenings, they wait for the weekends, they wait for long holidays. And having that team there available 24/7, I think is one of the biggest reasons why Sophos MDR is the best. It's just there, they will handle things. I used to see the emails all the time. So it's great knowing that they're there. They're protected. The MDR team has access to the endpoints, the firewalls. They see all of it. And so the way I used to look at it is, they kind of sat up and above and they just kind of looked over all of the client networks and they knew what was going on and where things were going and what was happening. And they gave us that bird's eye view. While we were focused on other things, the MDR team were focused on the security aspect of it. So that's a huge part of it.
Yeah, I think that's super important because the MSP should be focusing on growing their business and increasing their profitability. And I think security is a zero-sum game where the hacker needs to be right once. As an MSP, you need to be right all the time. So MSPs need to protect their customers and, deploy and implement the products and services that will protect the customer. If they say no, you have a very difficult decision to make. As Chris was mentioning earlier, we see maybe 3%, of customers say, no, I don't want MDR. I don't want to increase the price. As an MSP, you need to have a very difficult decision or a very difficult discussion with that customer. Do you want to be liable if anything does happen to that business? Because now we're seeing a lot of MSPs get sued as, a result of a breach or a hack. So I think, MSPs should work with vendors that actually put their money where their mouths are. That Sophos breach warranty protection, that is Sophos back. That is not an insurance-backed offering. And, work with a vendor that's dedicated to the MSP's success, because it will be a win-win for the MSP and their customer.
Scott, to that point, I think you said something in there that is extremely important for MSPs to understand. And it's truly the reason why I am here today at Sophos. I, for a number of years, ran MSPs, and I came over to Sophos because I want to help other MSPs do what I did. And a big piece of that was shifting liability. You have to shift the liability. The MSP has to shift the liability from them back to their clients, because if their clients are making decisions that are putting the client's business at risk, when something goes south, and it's not a matter of if, but when something goes south, that client's going to come back to the MSP and go, well, you didn't have me protected. I thought I had. That's always the thing, is I thought I had. And so you really have to work at shifting that liability over and letting the client know this, we as the MSP are doing this. And if you're not going to do this, then we need to have some conversations up to and including it's time for you to find somebody else to work with. Because at the end of the day, as the MSP, it is your name, it is your reputation that is on the line. And so I'm here at Sophos helping other MSPs have the conversation, the value and the solutions conversations with their clients, because so many are stuck with the pricing conversation, and I'm helping them switch to value and solution and shifting that liability away from the MSP's responsibility to the client's responsibility.
Finally, where can we learn more?
For any MSP that's interested in signing up, simply go to sophos.com/MSP. There's an application up there. You can be part of the Sophos Partner Program, as well as the MSP Connect Flex program. Or if anybody has any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to me directly. My email address is scott.barlow@sophos.com.
Scott and Chris, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thank you, Kenna.
Thank you, Kenna.
That concludes Inside the Channel, brought to you by Sophos. I'm your host, Kenna Johnson. See you next time.